All right, you knew we had to do it eventually, right? The big question, what is going on with the Disney dining plan? Is it coming back? And if it is, when can we expect to see it? Stick with us to learn about the history, the downfall, the future of this dining plan, and whether it's worth it for you here on DFB Guide. Hey everybody, it's AJ for Disney Food Blog. We've seen your questions flooding our pages and the Disney forums. We know that every new announcement Disney drops comes with more demands for the Disney dining plan's return. So we're here dropping the truth for you today concerning this long-loved or long-loathed program. Be warned, some of this stuff gets pretty shocking. Now, if you want to keep a hold of everything we're talking about in this video in digital PDF form, drop us your email at disneyfoodblog.com/ddptruth and we'll send a copy of all the info straight to your inbox. All right, time to unlock the secrets. What is the Disney dining plan? Oh, and why should you even care about it? The Disney dining plan was a pre-purchase plan that could be tacked onto your Disney vacation package. There were a few conditions though. You had to be A, staying at a Disney-owned hotel, and B, have tickets to the parks, which makes sense. Otherwise, why get a theme park food plan in the first place, right? There were multiple dining plans you could choose from, which would give you and your group a set number of counter service, that means fast food, and table service, that means sit-down, restaurant meals, as well as daily snack credits, a refillable mug, and every once in a while, some bonuses. Now, if you've ever been on a cruise, whether it be a Disney one or not, that's kind of how this plan worked. You'd prepay for all your meals ahead of time, and then you wouldn't have to worry about paying for them when you're in the middle of your vacation. You just gotta eat. So there were a handful of different plans for you to choose from, ranging from fast food to standard to deluxe, and it really all depended on how much you wanted to spend on food, and what places you wanted to dine, and how much food you wanted to get each day. But was the Disney dining plan better when it was first introduced? Did it get better and better over time? Is it actually worth paying for if it comes back? Well, let's jump back in time for a little bit of history. For better or worse, the Disney dining plan has experienced lots of changes over the course of its lifespan. Before the DDP was alive and well in the parks, guests visiting back in the mid-1990s could purchase a little something called the Food and Fun Card. The Food and Fun Card was Disney dining plan's first type of prepaid meal iteration. You get a little plastic card that allows you to grab 3 meals a day, not including alcoholic beverages or dinner shows, and after you ordered your meal, a cast member would come up and mark your card to keep track of how many meals you had left. Pretty straightforward. But then the Disney dining plan came swinging onto the scene in 2005. The DDP felt like the Food and Fun Play Card in a sense. It still kept track of how many meals you ordered throughout the day, but it also started breaking things down into more specific details. The first ever DDP looked like this: 1 table service meal, appetizer, entree, dessert, and a non-alcoholic beverage, and the tip. 1 counter service meal, entree, dessert, and a non-alcoholic beverage. 1 snack. Most snacks $5 or cheaper, and the parks qualified as a snack category for the Disney dining plan. In that original plan, it cost $35 a night for adults and $10 a night for kids. Not too shabby. I fully remember booking Pop Century to come and try the dining plan when it very first came out. Now, that being said, the only customization option you had back then, aside from having complete control over how you spent those meals and snack credits in the first place, was choosing whether you wanted to swap 2 of your table service credits out for 1 signature restaurant, like Cinderella's Royal Table at Magic Kingdom or the Hollywood Brown Derby at Disney's Hollywood Studios, for instance. Or you could swap out 2 table service credits for a dinner show. You could also usually swap a table service credit for a counter service credit if you really weren't in the mood to sit down and eat for an hour or more during the day, or you could swap a counter service credit for 3 snack credits. It was like bartering at a flea market or trading Pokemon cards. There were other swaps that came later. You could swap your table service restaurant for a counter service, you could swap your counter service credit for 3 snacks, etc., etc. But a lot of that was difficult to do. Some cast members didn't know how to do it, so in terms of customization, that was sort of come and go. Now, much like many Disney programs and add-ons, the Disney dining plan morphed over the years. The plan started breaking up even more categories to help target groups who wanted a cheaper dining plan based solely around fast food, as well as groups who wanted a more elevated Disney dining experience, including more signature restaurants without having to sacrifice extra meals in the process. Basically, the Disney dining plan started becoming more and more customizable, but with those customizable capabilities came price increases. Just a little overview here. The DDP ranged in price between $31.99 and $71.99 per night for adults in 2010, $37.58 and $102.27 in 2013, and $44.13 and $115.08 per night in 2016. However, there were those beautiful, glorious down seasons like after New Year's or when the new school year began in late August and early September, when the Disney Dining Plan would come free. That's right, free DDP with your hotel and theme park ticket purchase. Now that's when the plan really shined. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. In 2018, the Disney Dining Plan added alcohol to their list of options to help sweeten the DDP deal. Guests 21 and older could choose one single-serving mixed cocktail, beer, or wine at select restaurants, and any aged guest could order a non-alcoholic specialty drink like an artisanal milkshake, fresh smoothie, premium hot chocolate, or just your average soda, coffee, or tea. The prices of the plans did change after this edition. Quick service plans jumped from $48.19 to $52.49 for adults, and the standard plan went from $69.35 to $75.49. Deluxe jumped a couple of bucks, $106 to $116, but the jump wasn't as drastic as we were expecting, so this honestly made the overall deal for a Disney Dining Plan seem a little sweeter, but that wasn't the end of the price increases. Before the service up and vanished on us, this is what the final iteration of the Disney Dining Plan looked like in early 2020. Quick service plan was 2 quick service meals with beverages, 2 snacks, 1 resort refillable mug. It was $55 a night for adults and $26 for kids. Standard dining plan was 1 quick service meal and 1 table service meal, entree and dessert or family style buffet meal. Notice we no longer have an appetizer here. With beverages, 2 snacks, 1 resort refillable mug, $78.01 per night for adults and $30.51 per night for kids. Disney Dining Plan Plus. This was brand new when everything shut down. 2 meals per day of any combo of quick service or table service, entree and dessert, or family style or buffet meal with beverages, 2 snacks, and 1 refillable mug. That was $94.61 for adults, $35.01 for kids. And the deluxe dining plan, 3 table service meals, appetizer, entree, and dessert, or family style / buffet meal, or quick service meals with beverages, 2 snacks, 1 resort refillable mug. It was $119 per night for adults and $47.50 per night for kids. If you were a family of 2 adults and 2 kids and you planned on paying ahead of time for a standard dining plan for 4 park days worth of meals, you'd be paying around $868.16. Even the cheaper quick service option still racked up the cha-ching, costing 2 adults and 2 kiddos around $648. There was no option to cut down costs by ordering water or bringing your own food to the parks or even leaving the parks for a while to purchase a meal from a nearby fast food joint. The way you went about paying for your meals had already been predetermined and you'd already paid for all of them. If you take the OG Disney Dining Plan from back in 2005, the one without all the bells and whistles, but you still got an appetizer, and compare it to Disney's Standard Dining Plan from 2020, you're looking at a $43 price hike right there. To really pour salt on an open wound, the OG 2005 Dining Plan was also $20 cheaper than the 2020 Quick Service Dining Plan, and the 2005 one promised you more grub for your money. And yet, to this day, Disney vacationers still place the Disney Dining Plan on a pedestal, creating quite the divide between guests. If you had to choose a side, would you be Team DDP or Team Anti-DDP? As it turns out, people have always been pretty split about their feelings toward the Disney Dining Plan, so let's take a look at the pros and cons. Like I've talked about a bit already, there were different plans to accommodate different budgets and eating preferences, so that was pretty nice. Guests also liked the idea of not having to worry about paying for food once they arrived in the parks, but that wasn't necessarily the whole truth and nothing but the truth. You see, the DDP didn't cover gratuity, so you still had a surprise payment tacked on to the end of every meal. I'd compare this to paying a lot of money to send your kid off to college and then having them ask you to Venmo them gas or food money once they're there. Didn't you already do your part? But the DDP still gave guests the opportunity to eat at places or eat menu options maybe they wouldn't normally choose if they'd been thinking about paying out of pocket. Instead of going to a nice restaurant and choosing the lowest priced option available to save money, they could choose the highest priced meal and eat like royalty, since they'd already paid the bill through the Disney Dining Plan. Now, let's talk for a second about this whole word allow. A lot of people who got the Disney Dining Plan said, now I can eat at the more expensive restaurants, when before I couldn't. Well, yeah, you could. You always could eat at the more expensive restaurants. The only difference is that now you're stomaching that bill ahead of time, seeing a giant amount of money that you're paying towards food all at once and saying, well, that's okay, that covers my whole trip, instead of having to go to a signature restaurant and see a giant bill there, when really you're actually literally paying as much or more with the Disney dining plan than you would have probably paid on your vacation for food without it, even if you'd gone to the signature restaurant. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, many guests kind of felt imprisoned by the plan. Instead of ordering whatever they wanted, no matter the price, they kind of felt like they had to order those more expensive options because they wanted to get their money's worth. You know those holiday parties at the office, the ones where your boss takes everyone someplace nice and goes, order whatever, I'm buying, and you're like, oh yeah, you are. And then you order way more food than you really wanted or needed because you know it'll be covered in the end? That's kind of the same idea as the DDP, but for like a week straight for every one of your meals. And instead of it being your boss's money, it's actually your money. So you could wind up feeling like you're eating all day long, just to make sure the ends justify the means. And yet, were you really getting the best food available at each restaurant? After the Disney dining plan really started to take off, a lot of the really expensive food or moderately priced but popular items from the menus started getting relabeled in little sections called enhancements. That's where you could order lobster tail or premium meat cuts or even fancy side dishes, and you had to pay extra for those, whether you had the Disney dining plan or not. Along with this upset, guests also started to get heated over the quality of the food at the table service restaurants in general once the Disney dining plan took hold. Since more guests could order more food for less and more people were eating at table service restaurants, it seemed like a quality versus quantity issue had started to take root, and the once fancy foods weren't nearly as good as they used to be. Some of those higher priced items weren't just moved over to the enhancement portions of the menu, some of them were removed completely. Was the Disney dining plan really the culprit? And did this actually really happen, or is it all anecdotal? Well, many people blamed the plan regardless. Guests also started to notice how much harder it was becoming to get a table service or signature dining reservation, which is still the case for a lot of restaurants even now without the dining plan in place. And then, just like that, the dining plan vanished, which caused a slew of controversy all on its own. So where'd the DDP go and what is its future? Well, even though the Disney dining plan has been gone since 2020, its missing presence is still affecting guests, whether they realize it or not. Toward the beginning of the COVID shutdown, which led to thousands of vacations being postponed or flat out canceled, Disney World tried to give those guests a free Disney dining plan to use during their replacement trips. After all, initially the parks were only supposed to be closed for 2 weeks, so the people that got displaced during those 2 weeks were offered a free Disney dining plan with their return vacation. But then the closure extended to 3 weeks, a month, 2 months. It wasn't until 117 days later that the park slowly but surely started to reopen to the public. But the guests who were promised a free Disney dining plan suddenly didn't have it anymore. It was all really bizarre, like Disney kind of shrugged it off and went, well, instead of a free Disney dining plan for those trips that got canceled, let's just not bring the plan back at all right now. It was very weird. When the parks reopened after the 2020 shutdown, many things didn't return automatically. Lots of hotels were closed, restaurants stayed dark, entertainment was put on pause, and the Disney dining plan was completely out of sight. Today, most of those quintessential Disney things have either returned or returned with modifications. So what do we currently know about the future of the Disney dining plan? Let's go back to almost a year ago when Disney started getting us all hyped up for the openings and returns of some of our favorite things, like the start of the early theme park entry benefit, the reopening of fan favorite restaurants and hotels, and the kickoffs of the nighttime spectaculars. They also announced at the end of June last year that the Disney dining plan would be returning, but that was pretty much all they announced. No timeline, no package details, no pricing, nothing but the vague promise of a return, which we're starting to feel will be dropped on us out of the blue like a Beyonce album. All Disney really said about the DDP's return is this: while we're not quite ready to share an update on timing, we are planning to bring this guest favorite option back at a later date. And then radio silence. Now we're here a year later, and we still know pretty much as we did back then. So we're left with questions. When exactly will it return? What different plans will be available upon its return? Or will they have very similar, if not the same categories as before? And how much is the pricing going to increase for these plans? To get clues on answers, let's look at what we're seeing currently in Disney World's restaurants. Instead of a returning DDP, what we're seeing in the parks lately is an uptick in prefix menu pricings at restaurants. Think of prefix menus as mini versions of the Disney dining plan. Instead of predetermining how much you're going to pay for food during the course of your whole trip, you're predetermining how much you're going to pay for an individual meal and how much food you'll be able to order for that price, not including meal enhancements or specialty cocktails. Now, this isn't a new concept. In fact, restaurants like Cinderella's Royal Table in Magic Kingdom offered a prefix menu before prefix menus were cool. However, since the disappearance of the Disney dining plan, more Disney restaurants seem to be turning to this pricing style. We've seen prix fixe menus offered at brand new restaurants like Space 220 and La Crêperie de Paris and Epcot, and we've also seen prix fixe menus invade the offerings at pre-established restaurants that used to rely on a la carte alone, like Be Our Guest Restaurant in Magic Kingdom and California Grill in Disney's Contemporary Resort. Why the changes and additions? Well, to make sure Disney's still raking in the cash. Instead of just ordering a dessert and being able to dine in the West Wing of Be Our Guest, or ordering just an appetizer to split among the group and getting the full benefit of watching the Magic Kingdom fireworks from California Grill's private balcony, a prix fixe menu assures that guests will pay a set minimum amount, exactly the benefit Disney received through the dining plan. So is this Disney's new dining plan strategy? Is the dining plan a thing of the past and prix fixe menus will become all the rage? Well, with the prix fixe revolution and the corresponding opportunity for Disney to make sure you pay a minimum cost at a restaurant regardless of what you actually want to order and eat, this is a great time to talk about the elephant in the room. Is the Disney dining plan worth it? Well, let's look at the obvious, logical, economic facts here. Why in the world would Disney create and market with the power of 1,000 suns, including giving travel agents a commission on it, which they only do when they're making bank from an add-on, a program like this if they weren't seriously profiting from it? We've done the math hundreds of times and never really were able to make the dining plan come out with a substantial savings, even when we were ordering the most expensive items on the menu. The prix fixe meal example is a perfect one here. Disney has done the math to determine how much people spend on average on a restaurant meal. They have set the prix fixe meal price at the very high end of that average to ensure they get the most bang for their buck per customer. Multiply that times all the days of your trip, and you've got the dining plan price tag. By purchasing a dining plan, you're paying Disney for the most expensive versions of your potential meals, plus 2 expensive snacks and that refillable mug. So, is it worth it? Well, not really for cost savings necessarily, though many people do tell themselves it is. Many folks find the amount of food on the dining plan to be excessive, and having snack credits left over at the end of the trip basically became a meme. But if your goal is peace of mind and prepaying for thousands of dollars of your trip, then yes, it can be beneficial. That all said, if you could snag a free Disney dining plan, it could actually save you money. In our calculations, this was the only iteration of the dining plan that could save you beaucoup dollars, and only in certain circumstances, like when you couldn't get a hotel room discount that saved you more. So if you can score a free Disney dining plan at any time, you have our full blessing to grab that up. Okay, next question. So when this plan does return, according to Disney it will it cost more than it did before? Well, it's very, very unlikely we're going to see it cheaper or the same price as before. And even at the prices that were set before the 2020 shutdown, the DDP could feel like you were boxed in with your dining options. So instead of going to Le Cellier and picking myself up an order of $14 poutine with a water and calling it good, I felt obligated to pick out something lots more expensive and more filling with a dessert and drink because I'd already paid for that. Although I compared this plan earlier with what you could expect from a Disney cruise line, there are a couple of differences between the two. The main ones being, meals are all grouped in with your cruise line price and you don't have the choice to not prepay for your meals. But at Disney, you do. And when the plan returns, you still do. So even when the Disney dining plan comes back, whenever that may be, really mull over your options here. Instead of jumping on the bandwagon and taking this plan onto your ticket and resort price simply because it's back, think about if it makes sense for you and your group. Is this plan really gonna save you money? Now, all that said, I know lots of guests love the ease and prepayment of the dining plan, and that's totally cool. I've gotten it myself many times. If you're feeling lost without the Disney dining plan, there are still ways to incorporate those same types of strategies into your upcoming trip. Step 1, research. If you want to get a good idea of what you'll be paying for each of your meals before your trip, you're going to want to look at those menus, the pricing, and reviews. All the menus and updated prices are always available on the Disney World website, but if you want honest reviews and recommendations along with those price ranges, check out the 2022 DFB Guide to Walt Disney World Dining on our dfbstore.com. Our guide has an entire section dedicated to the Disney dining plan, so you can learn more about if it'll be the right fit for you and your family upon its eventual return. You can also pre-order the 2022 Epcot Food and Wine Festival Guide here too. Just type in code YouTube to save money on your purchase, and there's also a 100% money-back guarantee on that book. Step 2, set that budget for yourself and play the numbers game. What restaurants and quick service locations and snacks will you you'll be able to purchase and still remain within your preferred budget. Also, keep in mind that table service will also need a tip included, so budget with your future servers in mind too. Step 3, only plan to hit up a couple table and signature service restaurants, or plan on hitting up only one table or signature per day. If you wind up stacking too many table services back to back for multiple days, you'll not only be eating up a lot of your time in the parks, but also eating a lot more food than you might have the stomach space for. And that's an important point. Keep an eye on what you eat in a regular day, you and your family. What keeps you satiated and going strong and feeling good and not sort of overwhelmed and weighed down? And then realize that Disney portions are usually pretty large. I often find when I go to Disney World, after eating like a normal human being at home, within the first 3 days at Disney, I feel really weighed down. I feel bloated and kind of gross and frankly stuffed. Well, yes, I do run the Disney food blog, so I'm eating a lot most of the time, but I'm not usually eating more than what you would get on the regular standard Disney dining plan, and I'm certainly not eating as much as you would need to eat if you got the deluxe Disney dining plan. So get a good idea for what makes your body happy in terms of what you have the space in the room to eat each day. Now, step 4, see which restaurants offer loyalty programs. Lots of third-party restaurants at Disney Springs have app deals and email offerings that you can sign up for that'll send you savings on first visits or special occasions. I mentioned a lot of these in my cheapest day at Disney video, but we also have a whole chapter dedicated to those loyalty programs in the 2022 dining guide as well. And step 5, save where you can by bringing snacks from home, cooking back in your hotel room if you get a room with a partial or full kitchen, and packing those refillable water bottles or asking quick service locations for cups of water whenever it's time to rehydrate, which is basically all the time. Now, either way, I am interested to see what the new Disney dining plan might look like, and I'll continue to keep everyone updated once we learn more details. In the meantime, if you want a refresher on everything we talked about today, drop us your email at disneyfoodblog.com/ddptruth so we can send it your way free of charge. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for watching. As always, this is AJ for Disney Food Blog, and we'll see you real soon.